Hi, this is Shu with a review of the Spawn 3 from Under Armour. The first Spawn Anatomics was actually designed somewhat as a Stephen Curry signature, and it had a very strong, faithful following. And then they've kind of came up with a playoff version of that, and then they came up with the Clutch Fit Drive, which is basically Curry 1 without the charged foam. They've replaced the Micro G with the charged foam, which made the shoe worse, a lot harder. I hate charged foam. It's just a stiffer, starched up version of Micro G. So why go there? You don't see charged form anywhere these days. It's either Micro G or Hover or something else. And then they came out with the Spawn Anatomics Low 1, and they changed the name to just Spawn 1. The 2 came out the previous season, and the latest one is a Spawn 3. So that's what they're going with. It's just Under Armour Spawn. It's Spawn 3. This is not as beautiful as the second one. The second one, I think the design was incredible. I think it's the best Under Armour basketball shoe design ever, at least up to date. But it had a lot of flaws. The cushioning became a little bit more rigid and firm compared to the Spawn 1. And now the third one came out feeling a lot closer to Spawn 1, which is a little softer. And another plus is that this is very low to the ground. The shoe is overall very low to the ground. The forefoot, even though it's low to the ground, you can actually feel the Micro G being a little bit more forgiving than other Under Armour models where it's just low to the ground, and once you wear out the Ortholite insole, the cushioning is pretty much non-existent. It's slightly better. So it's comparable to Spawn 1, but maybe a little bit of a tinkering, very much similar. Another thing is that the heel is very, very low. So the heel to toe drop is very minimal, perhaps non-existent. So if you're someone who's always heavy on the heels, who also needs some kind of strong shock absorption in the heel, this is definitely not a shoe for you. A Micro G cushioning is something that endured the test of time. It feels really good. And the outsole is all over. It's wrapping all over the midsole, so the traction is something that's covering all corners, I suppose. The traction pattern itself is also quite interesting. It feels like sort of like the Kobe 9 Hyperdunk pattern there with the little X's, which puts a nice little accentuation there. The traction is definitely better than on Spawn 2, which kind of had a little bit of a flowing pattern that made you slip when you use certain foot areas as a pivot point. You slipped, and I lent my Spawn 2 to an older friend, and he was tripping all over the place, and I felt really bad. I guess it didn't really go with his style. He was very shifty. So for size 9.5, it weighs about 360 grams, and it feels a lot lighter than that. The fit itself, I would say if you have a narrow foot, you could go true to size, but if you need some sort of a bit more room in your shoes, go up half a size. I went up half a size because I'm not a crazy narrow footer. The upper material, it's got this net mesh kind of material with a lot of cross stitching there. If it was just this alone, it would have been good, but inside they have another thick inner booty, so ventilation is something that you can't expect from this shoe. The ankle area is nicely padded. There's no irritation whatsoever. The heel cup is stationed in a strategic form where it actually clutches to your heel nicely, though there's minimal, if not zero, heel slippage depending on the size of your foot, shape of your foot, that is. Interestingly, although it feels like this has a pretty wide base and it's got something that looks like it works as an outrigger, it actually comes to a stop when you tilt it a little bit to a 45-degree angle. So it's a bit of a risk if you need strong stability and anti ankle inversion protection or resistance. This is something that you want to keep in mind. I guess the stability is sacrificed to try and make sure there's a lot of grip and traction all over for people who are shifty. This was actually worn by a South Korean volleyball Olympian named Kim Yeon-kyung, so I think that's one of the reasons why it's actually Its popularity is skyrocketing these days, at least in Korea. You can see the X's that's very prominent, and everybody wants to see what the shoe was wearing. The insole is just a very thin orsolite, so the first cushioning you feel once you slide your foot in it, it's not the full cushioning. It will wear out. The orsolite will bottom out, so expect the cushioning to be like 20% less a few minutes or a few routine minutes of wearing this shoe. Don't be fooled by the insole. So it's a very minimal cushion shoe with good traction coverage, but I won't say this is something that's comparable or equal to Kobe 9. There is a little bit of a slippage compared to great tractions like the Kobe 9s or the Hyperdunks. Even the Hyperdunks, depending on the rubber material and depending on the style of your play, you might slip and slide in certain areas. So yeah, I think this is a step in the right direction for Under Armour. The Spawn 1 was promising, 2 was a beautiful shoe with fatal flaws and sorely lacking in cushioning and traction. So this is a good side grade, not an upgrade. So looking forward to the next model by Under Armour.